Michele, thanks for being here. This is really exciting.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm excited.
Have you done podcasts before? Is this something?
I've done a couple.
Awesome.
Oh, good.
Love
Okay,
it.
good.
Cool.
I was super excited when Brian shared about you, and I was looking at everything you do, and to find out you're so close to us is really exciting. So we'll have to come pay you a visit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it out here in our little portion of the county.
Yes, it's beautiful.
How would you describe what you do? Because you do a lot, and I've thought about this question for ourselves too, and it's a universal incumbents of things and knowledge and experiences we've had in supporting people and how we work with our clients and what we do. How would you describe what it is you do?
That's a great question. And it's really hard to, as you know, because I feel like in this journey for me, I came from a very kind of mainstream, as I had mentioned before, I grew up in a military family, grew up in a Catholic family. Church was our social group, our every Sunday, it was everything. And I feel like my journey has kind of been one of marching towards a little bit more openness to the bigger picture, and sort of each part of that moving from maybe someone would say mainstream to not as mainstream to a little bit more open. And not that mainstream is confined or closed, but I feel like there's a lot of limitation to some of the mainstream beliefs. There's requirements, there's all these things. And so to describe what I do, I always tell, like when I teach a Reiki class and I have students, I've got students that come in and they might already be holistic practitioners, medical, nurses, respiratory therapists. And then I have people who are just beginning their journey, moving off a mainstream path. And one of the things that I hear all the time is, I have no one to talk to about this. Like they're closet seekers.
Yes,
And,
yes.
I always tell them, they're like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I meet people where they are. If someone wants to know what I do, then I try to address what I do in a way that's comfortable for them to hear. Because you can kind of push up against some people's belief systems. And if you do, or their lack of knowledge of what sort of energy stuff is, they close the door. They're not even really open to hearing it anymore. So I find out sometimes I'm like, well, what do you know about? I try to kind of excavate a little bit to see where they are and get some information. And then I can talk to them about it in a way that's comfortable for them. So I tell people, especially in my Reiki classes, when I have someone who's like, I don't have anyone to talk to, I really press upon them that there is a difference between secrecy and kind of coveting something that's important to you. So if you feel like you can't talk to someone, don't approach it like, I have to keep this a secret. I have to keep this journey and this part of my life and this evolution that I'm going through a secret, because that feels horrible. Mm-hmm. It feels really horrible. Yep. And it feels isolating, versus saying, okay, this is something that's important to me and this person isn't there, so I don't need to share it. So I kind of do that with where people are. So I can either talk to them, if I need to bring some validation into some of the work I do with Reiki, especially. I'm like, okay, so if they're not open to it, they don't know. I'm like, well, let's see. I've done volunteer work at all of the INOVA healthcare systems, Life with Cancer, INOVA Loud, and INOVA Fairfax. I've done hospice work. I've done, where I'm working with the nurses and there myself at the same time. And there's a Johns Hopkins School of Reiki. I kind of feel like if it's good enough for them, there's got to be some validity to it.
Yes.
So that's kind of the way I approach people who really are like, what is that? Is this against my religion? Because crazy enough, you get that.
Yes.
So for that portion, I kind of have that conversation and explain that I'm a Reiki practitioner. Although some people may not hear, I do violet flame Reiki, I do angelic Reiki, I do Buddhic Reiki, I do Mother Mary Reiki. Not everybody's ready for all of that. I don't need to blow the doors off of it if someone's only willing to hear the beginnings of that. When I have people who are more open, I just say, overall, the umbrella is I'm an energy reader. And underneath of that, all the strands underneath of that, I work with Reiki energy. I can do Akashic record readings. I'm an intuitive. So it depends on people's level of openness as to how I explain what I do, because not everybody is there and doesn't understand, especially the biggest concept is the Akashic records. I just try to find out where people are, and I explain to the degree that I think they can have an understanding.
Yeah, that's great. I want to take note of that, because sometimes you get so excited, or at least I I get so excited about the things that I'm doing or if I'm learning something new, especially going through the Reiki process recently, and you want to tell everybody, you want to share it, and you have to gauge where they're at. And I think that's important.
Especially in this culture, it's so divisive, and it's either I'm right and you're wrong, and that's weird. We consider ourselves seekers and want to learn and find it interesting and want to know more about it. And if we don't, I think it's on us that we haven't explored it, and we can't judge somebody based upon something we don't know or haven't learned. And they have gone through that process. And I think for us, it's respecting that. And if they believe it, then they had to get there somehow. And so just being open for us, and part of this podcast is really just exploring and learning and wanting to hear from people and their experiences. And it's been so valuable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's okay to not subscribe to somebody else's journey or what they are believing. I hear a lot of stuff. So at Terra, Christa, our brick and mortar, people will come in and they'll be like, this may sound crazy. I'm like, oh no, no, it won't sound, I promise it is not going to sound crazy, because everybody comes from a different place. And I think honestly, I think it's really cool. I think it's amazing that people can be such explorers, and that's how I look at it. I'm like, hey, that is great. Like, that's great. You've explored that. I don't feel like it's part of my pull. So good for you. But I think, if we can across the board become a little bit more inclusive and accepted of the things that are different from where we are, that's amazing.
Yes.
So we work with kids and families with autism for many years, and we've worked with people, and I've seen it for myself where clients, maybe non-speaking or other challenges, they have this sixth sense, kind of higher energy awareness, but therapists that provide this therapy have not wanted to share it for fear of shame, or being this crazy person, or that's woo woo, and getting judged. And it feels like to become maybe more acceptable, or let's learn more, or kind of more mainstream. And I've seen it for myself where this client was reading the therapist's mind, and we were asking the therapist, think of your favorite movie or write it down, and then the client spelled it on his typewriter. And like, how else in the world would you do that? And
when you had asked about how do you tell people about what you do, and when we talk about people who aren't quite there, or don't understand, or even intimidated by the thought of these things that aren't rational necessarily, I always push them in the direction of quantum physics. Because quantum physics is mind-blowing, but these concepts can be mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. And so I try to push them in direction of like Rupert Sheldrake, who is like a true rocket scientist when we talk about that. And he's doing so much research in morphic resonance and all of these things. And he's done studies in energy and kind of the telepathy vein of how energy lines run and how we connect with people on the simplest level of, my husband and I, he'll be like, what are we having for dinner? I'm making spaghetti. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe that. I was going to tell you, I'm so in the mood for spaghetti. Like, from very simple things that everybody can accept. The phone rings and you're like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. These are things that we've come to accept as just funny coincidences. Yep. But there's super minor ways of connecting vibrationally and along some unseen line of energy where we are connected to that person in a very etheric way. So when people are curious, but they're not so sure, David Hawkins, Power versus Force, there's so many different, bits of material, books, things you can listen to that validate that concept from the level of quantum energy. And some people can wrap their mind, because they might say it's a pseudoscience, but it falls into a category of science. And some people have an easier time of accepting that, I think.
Yeah, we hear where's the data, where's the research, where's the science, and that's a good place to start. Do you believe we all have this ability, and it's a matter of cultivating or learning more, or what's the word, exercising the ability to be more present and aware of this energy receptive?
Yeah, 100%. So Wayne Dyer said something a long time ago, like when I first started this decades ago. There was something I heard that I loved, and it was like he said something along the lines of, it isn't whether or not we're connected, it's how tarnished is the line. And so over time, yes, we're born with that sense of intuition, that sense of ability to tap into something higher. And I think over time, through programming, some people feel the gift and they get scared by it, or they don't trust it and they're like, nope, and they kind of shut it down. And so absolutely, I think we all have it. And I tell clients all the time who are on the precipice of really opening up to intuition and like, it's so strong. I'm like, the universe has a way. I really believe this because I saw it in myself in my own journey, and I've seen it with other people. As soon as you start listening, then it's like, okay, the line of communication becomes stronger when you have that confidence and that trust that what you're getting is what you're getting and that it has a place and it is valid. The more we do that, it's just like flexing a muscle. The more you do bicep curls, the stronger that muscle is going to get. So yeah, I think we're all connected. It's just a matter of practicing it, working with it, trusting it, listening to it, all of those things.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I love Wayne Dyer. I love him. He was like one of the first books I picked up in the beginning of my journey, probably 25 years ago in college. But that makes me think of, I love what you said, how tarnished is the line. And I think about Reiki and my process with it. And my teacher was talking about, we all have that great bright light within us. We have that in us. It's just how much dirt and everything darkness has been piled on it from our experiences, from our limiting beliefs and everything like that.
Yeah.
And once we can wipe all that away and shine our great bright light and keep practicing that, the better we build that muscle, like you're saying. But I just wrote that down of how tarnished is the line. And if we can keep wiping away the tarnish, then we can get there.
You exercise that muscle. Did you always have this ability? I know. So your mom started Terra, Christa in 1988 in Delaware. I read, incredible,
Yes.
And you have both kind of been on this path together. Did you grow and become more open to this path, or was it kind of something you felt from an early age and knew that was your calling?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I kind of like, it's funny now. Growing up, it was definitely didn't feel funny, but in a military family, 6 kids, 5 brothers, Catholic, very stringent, very strict.
Yep.
And my mom started on the spiritual journey, and she was, like I said, Catholicism was the base of our family and my upbringing, but she kind of started getting more curious and started seeking. And they had a little beach house in Bethany at the time, and she would go down to Fenwick Island and do the shopping and all that stuff, and befriended a couple of guys who had this little teeny rock shop in Fenwick Island. It was like the size of a big closet, honestly. And so it kind of opened her up. She started with crystals, and then she was getting into like Warner Earhart est training. And then it was going into, self-empowerment. So she started moving away from sort of religion and moving into being self-empowered and bigger energies and all of that stuff. But everything she did, she took me. So because I had 5 brothers at home. So my mother was like, you're going to come with me. So I remember being at a lot, having readings. Like I remember being very young and being there and I was way in over my head. I had no idea, but I was with my mom and I know she was doing this. And so I think through just sort of saturation and absorptions, getting exposed to it, even if I didn't understand it, going to different like events with her, going down to the Casey Center down in Virginia Beach. So she just took me everywhere. And then eventually I was able to kind of take off the training wheels, and I started doing, playing with oracles. The I Ching was the first thing that I picked up. And it was amazing how I could put my thought and energy into something and then get this answer that was like, whoa, like it was so accurate. And it gave me the confidence that I need to keep playing. So, and my mother, went through Reiki training. She was like one of the first Reiki teachers in the area that was providing services.
A trailblazer almost. Did this is so
100%.
like out of what was expected at that time for the wife and the caretaker and all those children. Was there a lot of pushback from your dad or from friends or family? And what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And especially getting away from the church and kind of doing this alternative stuff.
All of the above.
And she just, this is what I'm interested in.
And she just was like, I need to do this. I need to do this. It was her path and no one was going to knock her off of it. And there was isolation. There was losing some friendships and connectivity because she was more expanded and that was, way outside the box. So things really did change for her. And she was okay with that. She was okay with with evolving and realizing that, some things were no longer going to fit, or some people weren't going to accept it. So it didn't stop her.
I mean, that's incredible for your mom
Yes.
to not just continue to be seeking and growing, but this is just reminding us of kind of our family journey right now. Last weekend, we went to Frederick and went to the crystal shops, and my daughter's buying all these crystals, and she just bought a bunch of singing bowls, and she's learning all about it and super
Awesome.
invested and really excited about it. And I think that's just for mom kind of doing your journey and everything. So Catherine just got a Reiki master training. She just finished that and kind
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And all that. I don't know if you shared that before, but
I mean, and kids are more open today, to be honest with you. Kids are so much more open. And it's so funny because we say at the store all the time that the kids are bringing in the parents to teach the parents.
Yeah.
So the kids will come in and they're like, I already have this crystal, this crystal, this crystal. And the mom or the dad's just kind of behind them listening, and the kids are the teachers.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, my daughter, I think, they've kind of come along, anytime I'm doing yoga or anytime I'm doing anything, they're interested, especially when I leave to go to events. They always want to go. And I'm like, no, this is, my time. So recently I did take them to a sound bath with me. I was like, okay, let's do it. Because they had been asking, and I was like, I think it might be a great experience for them. And they loved it. They want to go to everything. And that's when my daughter bought the singing bowls with her own money, a full set of crystal bowls. I mean, just amazing. I love that. And I think sometimes I've pushed them away from it because it's like, this is my time, I need to take but the more I can bring them into it, and I have brought them into it, and we've, with meditation and yoga and all the different things along the way. But now it's like, I really need to share it with them more. And you're kind of a testament to that, of why it would be important.
One of the things too, that like with my Reiki classes, when I teach the teacher level and people are in there, and I swear by this, I've had people in my first degree class, and they're a master already. Like, you can tell they're just figuring themselves out. And I tell them all the time, you never know who's sitting in the chair. Don't ever think that you're evolved beyond them. Sometimes they just don't realize. And, maybe you could say, like someone would say, they're an old soul, or you just, you get that sense of energy about someone, and you're like, wow, this person, there's something, you know what I mean? So your children, our children could be further along the scales than we are. And they're just figuring that out.
Yes. Yeah, I do believe that. And the other night after she bought her singing bowls, they wanted to give me a guided meditation before sleep instead of me doing it. And so I laid there and she did the singing bowls, and my son gave me a crystal healing, put crystals on me, and did his own Reiki thing. And I was just in awe of I think they are beyond, and how amazing can their life be with those tools and that opening so early and so young.
Exactly.
Like, I wish I had that.
Or
as
just
a kid.
like, having the open-mindedness, and let's try this out, or let's explore it, or let's
so it's not weird,
next.
anything that comes about, it's that maybe they'll be more open and eager to learn and curious. Yeah.
I remember years ago, my son now is 26, but when he was, I would say probably 8 or 9, I was upstairs and I could hear him playing in the basement with a friend. They were running around. The friend got hurt. Like, he fell, he got hurt. And I could hear my son. All I heard, because I wasn't down there, was, here, let me do this. This is, my mom does this. It's called Reiki.
Oh my goodness.
And she said and I don't know what he was doing, but he saw me enough and he knew what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And he's like, it's going to help you feel better. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, these kids, they don't question it. That's the thing. They don't have that like cynical filter. They're just happy to do it.
Was there a point when you were going with your mom and then you kind of started learning on your own where you knew, okay, this was my path and I want to continue? Or was there a specific thing that you're like, wow, this is for me? I don't know if there was like a major event. It sounded like you were just experiencing it with your mom, learning with your mom, and going, and then kind of just continued.
Yeah. So I think too, my quest was always, how do I make sure everybody can be open to this? So I studied the quantum physics. I was very into the energy aspect of it. I was very interested in the physiology of the body and how that works, and researching like energy vibration from kind of a medical standpoint. And so, because I'm like, I want to meet people where they are, I need to educate myself on how to have that conversation. So I kind of moved on from there, where my mother always stayed within the very spiritual realm.
Okay.
And so, like with my Reiki training, I also went on and did the traditional Japanese Reiki training. And then I did a lot more with learning to do readings, opening up to, Akashic Records, things like that, where my mom never did that. So I kind of just kept going, adding things to my path on the journey, and just kind of picked up the torch and continued on with it. So, and I've been running the store for the past probably 2 decades now. So,
Wow.
And
That's
you did EFT too, which feels more accepted, more mainstream,
in the
right? People
therapeutic
can,
world.
yeah,
Yeah.
can recognize that.
I mean, I feel like everybody's talking about your
Sympathetic.
sympathetic nervous
Yeah.
system.
Oh, yeah.
That's now mainstream. People get the fight or flight and how we need to calm ourselves down and the things that we can do. And EFT is a great way for people to understand that this is what this does.
Yeah, I want to hear about the Akashic Records because I don't know much about it, and I've been hearing about it over the years, but I just haven't read about it. I haven't looked into it enough. Can you tell us what that is and how that works?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way that I explain to every person who sits down with me that's never had a reading, and they all instantly, like you see a light go off, is because it's a big concept. And we know the Akashic Records is referenced in every spiritual text by a different name, the book of life, and being able to have like the alluding to there being some book that holds all this information, right? But who understands that? Like that concept is mind blowing. So what I tell people is, think about the cloud. Okay. To me, the cloud is mind blowing. I'm not
Yes.
technical, but I know there's this place called the cloud, and I know you can't go to it. It's not physical, but it holds information. It holds pictures, records, documents, music. Like it holds all this stuff, but where is it being held? Like, where is the cloud, right? That blows me away. I'm more on board with understanding the Akashic record than the cloud, but it's equivalent. It is this bank or this source that holds information, and we can't go to it. The only proof we have is that we know we can retrieve things from it. So it must exist somewhere. So the Akashic records are like the cloud for your soul's information. And so I tell people when I try to explain this, if you can just be open to the possibility that we've lived more than one life. And some people can't, just can't go there. And I'm like, that's okay. You're never going to have an Akashic record reading. And that's okay. You need to be where you are and where your belief system is and where you're comfortable being. But with Akashic records, let's just try to be open to the possibility that we are a soul that lives multiple lifetimes in order to evolve. And so, just like we evolve as human beings on Earth, every year of life brings a new step on our path of evolution, from learning to walk, talk, eat, be self sufficient, form social circles, learn how to be a teenager, how to rebel, how to become a young adult, an adult, move into adulthood, so we evolve through the years of our life. Our soul evolves through lifetimes versus years of life. So we know evolution happens, right? In some sort of category of measurement, whether it be years, lifetimes, centuries, whatever it is. Evolution happens through some sort of time frame. With the Akashic record, it is lifetimes. So when we go into the Akashic records, and anybody can do it, just like anybody can be intuitive, it takes really just trust and faith and a lack of questioning, because any sort of reservation within yourself about the validity of it, or whether or not the information is truthful, for lack of a better way to put it, then that creates a little bit of a reservation, which then creates a little bit of a block. So going into it, just having that belief, that faith, that as you read this information, that this is accurate information, because you're talking about a soul level experience. And our brain is like, I don't remember that. It can't be true. I don't remember that. Although some people, and many times in readings, they'll be like, wow, that really is crazy, because I've always blah, blah, blah. You know, or like, oh my gosh, I do have that goes on. That's weird because that's something I do now. Or lots of times there is a correlation in some way. And the information is always going to be something that resonates, is what I tell people. Like when you get information, you're not going to have that. Like I remember that. And rarely, like some people might be like, I always have dreams about that, which is kind of interesting to me. But it'll be resonant. It'll be like, wow, that feels really weirdly accurate to me. It's something you feel to be true. And so when we go into the records, it really is about trying to get some information that is going to support your journey, bring some understanding. It's a panoramic picture versus a zoom lens. So it's really about the big picture and connecting dots of understanding, I think, more than anything.
I want to get mine.
Yeah. How do you, so that's what does that look like? You go and is it a guided spiritual? Is that something you pull out of people or they?
Yeah. So what everybody's different, you know,
Yep.
just like any reading you go into,
Yep.
they have their process. Everybody's different. And it really is, I tell people I consider myself a facilitator of information. I'm kind of like a translator. And so let's say you take a vacation, right? And you need to hire a tour guide. You could have one tour guide that their vision and the way that they do their tour is going to show you all these mainstream tourist things. And then you might have another tour guide who's like, I know all the stuff that no one else knows. I'm going to take you in these back tunnels and it'll be a whole different experience. So the person who's facilitating who they are, how they interpret information. I tell people I'm limited by my actual knowledge because, you know, I am not a history person. Like I barely got through that class. So I can tell you all the textures and scenery of where something's happening. But as an interpreter, I can't interpret another language if I don't know it. I can't interpret something that I don't have a base of knowledge for. So everybody's different. But what I tell people is, when I sit down, I always open with a little bit of a guided meditation where we kind of connect our energy and get our energy grounded. And then I'll do a prayer. So it seems from everything I've seen and the way other people do it is the key really is a prayer to open the records. And it's less about there being a very specific prayer and more about the intention and aligning with that energy of the records through prayer. So I've got my own prayer, you know, there could be a different prayer for everybody who does it. So it seems to be, you know, the meditation as far as the process of it, the meditation, the prayer. And then once we affirm the records are open, it's up to the translator, as I call myself, or the facilitator to see what's coming in. So what comes in for me is I tell people, this is how I get it. People are like, how do you get it? I always hear that phrase, what are you getting? These antennas. But I tell people the way that it works for me is I see things. So when I see things, they're in my head and they feel like a memory recall. That's how I see them. So if I tell my client, if I asked you about your, you know, what you had for breakfast this morning, you're going to tell me, but back here, you're going to have to pull the memory up, however faint or distant it is, because when we recall something, there is a memory or an image that goes along with it. And so that's what it feels like. When I see something, it feels like I'm pulling up a memory, but I know it's not mine. So I can interpret based on what I'm seeing in that way. I hear things and I tell people what that means is, and I always get it on my right side for whatever reason, is if you and I are at a table having coffee outside and there's two people sitting next to us talking, I might be like, oh my gosh, you know what they're talking about? Because I can hear them even though I'm present with you. So it's almost like an overhearing or an eavesdropping. So when I see things, it's like a memory call and I kind of get it in my head. And when I hear things, it's like an overhearing almost. And so whatever shows up, I just kind of interpret it. And I like to find out, why are you here? What is it that you are looking for? What would be great having when you walk out the door? Like if you walk out the door with something, what would that be? And so that way, at least I know their intentions. And then I let them know. So we'll see if that's what shows up. You know what I mean? Like you're going to get what you actually need to know and not always what you want to know.
Yep.
And that's kind of how that goes. And it's a dialogue. And lots of times, so energies always show up. It's not like your Uncle Fred. I can feel like it could feel like a kind of a masculine energy, a feminine energy. I can feel realms, like it could feel like it's an angelic presence sometimes. Presence. It could be a goddess presence. It could be, one of a really protective spiritual presence. I can feel what the energies feel like, but not necessarily know their names, if that makes sense. And it is a dialogue. The energies are speaking to the person, and I'm just translating. I'm telling them what's being said, but it's all directed towards that person sitting there. And they can ask questions and, all that stuff. So it really becomes a conversation, a three-way conversation between some spiritual energy, the person, and me as the translator, is kind of how I feel.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
To have that. So you're a clear audient and clear visual, would you?
I mean, I really kind of consider myself clear cognizant, because I feel it too. And I lead with how I feel about things, and then I interpret it. Sometimes the way that it feels to me, the images come as sort of a confirmational tool, of what that message is, of confirmation of what it is that I'm sensing. And many times, like especially in Akashic record reading, the feeling is so, I've sat there and bawled my eyes out with clients. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But if I feel it too, it can be really powerful. So I really consider myself clear cognizant, because I've always said, before I even knew what that phrase was, I would tell people, I feel like my body's a barometer. I just feel like I feel things. And then I know what it is by the way that I feel it. And so that's when I was like, okay, that's clear cognizant. I get it. So yes, I would say the clear audience and all of that stuff plays a role, but mostly I just feel like I know things as a whole chunk versus bits and pieces.
So I have a question. Sorry. Someone asked me the other day if I had met my spirit guides yet. And I was like, no, I haven't. And they're like, really? And I was like, no, that sounds great. How do I do that? So with those, the energy and the spiritual essence, would that be your spirit guides speaking to you through you, to the person through you?
It's always their guides. It's always their guides. I'm just a facilitator. So anything I see, hear, or whatever is for them, not me. And so I love that you brought that up about the spirit guides, because I'll be honest with you, I haven't met my spirit guide.
Okay.
But what I've come to I feel a really deep connection to kind of the collective consciousness. And I feel like, and maybe it's just for me, maybe it's for everyone, I don't know, but I feel like guides that are there show up situationally. Like I have just chosen to have the belief that just because I've been doing this so long and I haven't had one step forward as like a primary thing, that I kind of feel like it's not about having one guide for me, but about knowing that there are so many levels of guidance, energies, beings that are available, that the ones that you need at the time are the ones that are going to show up. So I kind of equate it to a family. If my kid comes in, I'm not like the hierarchy here. Like there are some things dad's going to need to be there for. There are some things mom's going to need to be there for. There are some things they need their sibling for. It's going to be situational, but as a whole, your family is one, and not one of you is the responsible party for the care or the tending to. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's kind of how I look at it. As I haven't yet. And maybe someday it'll be like, I am your spirit guide, but that hasn't happened for me yet.
Or do you have the ability to turn this off and have your private life and your be able to not be so open to all this energy and cognizant things you're receiving, and have a time to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to, it's on 24/7 for me. If I'm like working with things going on in my family or stuff with myself or things that are revolving around me, it's always on. It's a part of who I am. And I don't want it off, because it is input that I want to move through my daily life. So no different than my sense of sight, my hearing.
Yeah.
It's a sense, and I always want it on for me. I absolutely have ironclad boundaries when it comes to other people. And a lot of it is, I just believe that energy exchanges, whether it be a Reiki session, whether it be a reading, should happen in a sacred space. I think that it's at the store. I can't tell you every day, people walk in and be like, what do you get about me? What are you getting about this? And I'm like, I don't do that. Like It'll be open for you when we're in a private space and when it's in a sacred, protected space. So it's off. Now, that's different than having intuitive thoughts about another person. If I'm in a situation, if I can have intuition about a circumstance that might be happening, or having intuition if I meet someone, feeling a certain way, like my body will register like, oh, you better watch that, or, whatever. That's different. The intuitive stuff is always on, because if that's something that you have, again, it's a sense and a gift that you have that you're not going to shut off any more than you will any of your other senses. But as far as that higher sort of stuff, I absolutely keep it protected, and, my boundaries are pretty firm.
Do you share the intuitive stuff with people if it's, I don't know, important or valuable? Like, pick
Solicited? No. I would never walk up to someone in a coffee shop and be like,
go get your
listen, I
blood
just
work.
want to, I'll let you know, I'm picking up on this for you. Like, if someone asked, what do you think? I'm open to a question of what do you think versus what are you getting? Because what are you getting implies that I'm sort of willfully and against their permission plugging into them and reading them, like peeking behind the curtain in some way. But if someone asks, like, what do you think about this? Then that's where, I feel like my intuition is at play there. And I'm happy to share what I think about something through my intuitive channel. But I'm not going to tap into higher energies on the floor at the store or in a coffee shop or unsolicited. So I'm happy to be like, well, based on the information, this is what I'm feeling or sensing from an intuitive standpoint.
Gotcha. You talk, I've noticed a lot about blocking and people letting go and being open and being stuck. In your, sounds like over 20 years of seeing people, what's blocking people? What's stopping people? What are people afraid of? What do you see as maybe a common thread as to preventing people from moving forward or continuing their growth?
Yeah, I mean, and you brought up several times, and a lot of people talk about limiting beliefs. And so, one of the things I really try to talk to my clients about is like, you need to give yourself a break, because two phrases I just really can't stand are let it go. Like, I need to let it go. And I have these limiting beliefs that I just need to change. And quite honestly, they're two things that kind of have more control over you than you do of it. And so I believe that our well established beliefs that are not serving, that are kind of not in alignment, not serving our goal, our path, our ability to truly be happy, and learning how to free ourselves from those, because it is a process of needing to free ourselves from the things that are kind of holding us back, which can be our belief systems. And our belief systems are well ingrained parts of us that have been derived from true experience and the proof of what that belief is, even if it isn't good for us. And so everything else gets built upon that. So, you have this experience, you have an experience, you have a feeling about that experience, and you assign meaning or fact because of that. And then that established and reaffirmed many times becomes your belief. So if I'm riding my bike, and this is actually true. So I was young, I was riding my bike down my street, and there was a gentleman that was a police officer that had two German Shepherd police dogs. So I'm riding my bike down the street. One of the dogs got out and was tearing down the street after me. I was literally terrified. And as I'm telling this story, my heart is racing, because I'm like, I'm going to die. I was like 10 years old. And so every time he got the dog back, but I was terrified like that. So I had a thought that I am going to die because this dog is chasing me off his leash. And the feeling was terror. And then every time I rode by on my bike, his house, those dogs were barking and like jumping up at the fence. And every time it kind of got reaffirmed to this day. Even if I don't have it as a belief, it is in a subconscious way. If I see a dog off a leash, I get terrified. I freeze. And so let's say it's something else. Let's say it's something within your family, something. So now that belief is there, as much as I don't want to be afraid of dogs off a leash. So I know that's something I need to work on. But I think that's what holds us back, is we have these ingrained beliefs that have happened through experience and intense emotion, because, we've got the magnetic part of it and the electric part of it. So that's with even a manifestation, let's say, and I might be going on a tangent here, but
That's great.
with manifestation, we can say things all day long and manifest and have 50 affirmations we say every morning. But if inside we're believing the opposite, or we're really connected to what is versus what we want, then all that vibration of thought and verbal affirmation is going to go nowhere, because the emotion is still connected to the thing you don't want, what is. And so with those beliefs, part of it is, how do we get the feeling in alignment with what it is we're trying to dismantle? And if we're trying to dismantle a belief that we know isn't serving us, but the emotion or the feeling behind that belief is still well established, that's where we have to work. You can change your thoughts and say different things in your brain all day long, but your brain is in partnership with your emotion. The brain and the heart are connected.
And that's trauma. It sounds like is what you're talking about, right? The emotional attachment to that memory. And so, how do people do that? What do they do? Well, how can you move forward with working through that to be able to then have hope and joy and all the other things that...
So I think some of it, there's a couple phrases I really like in the Esther and Jerry Hicks book, The Law of Attraction, the thing that they talk about a lot is when something's really big that we're trying to dismantle, like a limiting belief, a trauma belief, that thinking that we can just ignore it or choose to not believe that anymore isn't like a realistic thing.
Every guy for the last 50 years, right? Yeah. I'll say it, but we're changing that. We're changing that.
Absolutely. The information is there.
The military, my dad was in the military, and there was no emotions. You didn't talk about that.
No.
Do your work.
Yeah, absolutely not. But the concept is to pivot. Like, we need to just pivot and look at something else and say, yes, this exists. So one of my analogies, and whenever I work with people, I could write a book of analogies because I use them all the time, because I feel like it can help people understand better if you can connect it to something they already understand. And so one of my analogies, I call it the ugly chair in the room. So I have this beautiful beach house in my head, and it's just gorgeous, and it's got this almost like a castle turret, and it's a octagonal room, and it's got like shabby chic furniture, and the windows are open, it's breezy, it's beautiful. But I inherited this really ugly chair from my aunt, and I don't know how to get rid of it. I feel guilty. I'm holding on to it. So I've got this beautiful room, this beautiful view. I've got this chair that I really don't want in my room, the ugly chair, I call it. And every time I walk in the room, it's the only thing I see. And it's like, I'm just obsessed with this ugly chair. I don't want it here. I'm ruminating over that chair being there. It's ruining the beauty of my space. And, so the pivoting concept is, it's there. Sometimes we need to accept is the big thing. To be able to move on, we have to accept that it exists. Once we can accept it, because if not, then we're just resisting it. We're in a state of resistance. We're walking around it. We're talking about how bad we don't like it, how hard it is, how we want to get rid of it. We talk about it all day long, and it just keeps it in existence. And so with the ugly chair in the room, I'm always like, we have to go, okay, this chair is here. I have to accept that it exists. It's in this space. I'm going to pivot from looking at that chair for a minute. I'm going to look out the window. I'm going to see what's going on in the ocean. I'm going to sit in this comfortable chair. It's taking a break from it every now and then, because generally if people know there's something that's wrong, that they want to change, that's limiting them, that's harming them in some way, it's like a dog with a bone. We can't let it go. And we think about it all the time, and we're holding on to it so tight because we want it to go away. And, we're just hoping that we can manifest it going away. And so I tell people, let's accept the fact that it's existing. Let's take a break from it. Like, don't look at the chair, look at the other parts of your life. Because if we can build energy in the places that are positive, that we do want, then we're able to kind of take a break, take a breath, and it diffuses and deflates the energy a little bit. It's not making it go away yet. Working through accepting that this happened, and working through why and the bits and pieces. I'm a big person for breaking things down. If there's a belief, there's many components to that belief. It's not just one thing. It's not just one chunk of feeling, thought, or emotion. There's a lot of pieces that played into that to make it an established thing. And so how can we break this down? And having a greater understanding it. So we kind of dismantle it a little bit, talk about it more into smaller pieces, and see if we can start chipping away at some of those pieces and see if we can kind of let it go, do some pivoting when we need to. And I'm a big person for, you have to take in information you don't already have. If you've got a limiting belief, you've got to read things, listen to things, hear other perspectives, get information to give your brain the option to have a different thought. Joe Dispenza's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, amazing.
Yeah. I love that
Because
one.
it is about breaking the habit of being ourselves. We have to break those neural pathways of thought, so it's a process that we have to go through, and we have to use a lot of different tools to get there.
Yeah, where attention goes, energy flows. It's kind of that.
But not pushing it away still. You're acknowledging it, accepting
it,
but then choosing to shift and do other things.
Yeah. And some people are like, how do you accept something that's unacceptable? And my answer to that is, sure, it is absolutely unacceptable. Some things are unforgivable. And it's not accepting the trauma of it, it's accepting that it happened. Because it did. It did. It's not accepting a heinous act or forgiving a heinous act, because our bodies and our brains have a hard time accepting something or forgiving something that isn't forgivable. But we have to, if we can, get to a place where we can forgive to the degree of the tie that it has on us. But it's kind of like that phrase, I can forgive, but I'm never going to forget. And that's totally fair, because how else do we learn if we don't hold on to things and learn from them?
What's your favorite tool? And I guess it's probably more individualized, but how do you know when to use what of your many tools in what situation? And do you have a preferred?
Yeah, so it's just kind of the way that it has happened that I notice, I'm like, oh, this is how this always seems to be happening, is when I sit with someone, and sometimes people are like, I want Akashic Records, I want an intuitive, they know, I want a tarot card reading, they know what they want. If someone sits down and they're like, I'm not sure, I don't know what I need and I don't know what I want, I'm like, okay, well then I always lead with my intuition. And when I know I'm definitely meeting with someone, I kind of put it out there to the universe, whether it be the morning of or the day before. I'm like, okay, what do I need to know? Is there something I need to, kind of connect with before I meet with this person? And once someone has made an appointment or we have an agreement to meet and see each other, there's sort of like the energy line is already connected. The permission is granted and the energy line's already connected. And so I'm like, okay, well, I always lead with my intuition first, and let's just see where that goes. And so I'll tell them general impressions. I'm like, this is, because I feel like it's a starting point. I'm like, this is what's meant to come up right now. So this is probably where we need to start. And what I was feeling about you when I was thinking about meeting with you was blah, 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 blah. And then it starts the dialogue and the conversation. And usually, we kind of go in that direction. So I always lead with my intuition on everything, because that's just what's always there.
Sure.
And then we can meander into an Akashic record reading, or it could go into, hey, let's do some cards, or let's just keep this a strictly intuitive reading. So I always lead with just my general sensing and what I'm kind of picking up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what you do for yourself when you're feeling stuck or when you're feeling challenged or just overwhelmed from all of the work that you're doing. Do you have go-to strategies or tools that you use then to help yourself or to get information for yourself?
Yeah. So I really try to apply everything that I preach. So a big thing for me, and I think because I'm connected with energy so often, is I absolutely have to clear some space to not have anybody around me. So just disconnecting, like a day to myself in the house with nobody else around. Like sometimes I just need to take the phone off the hook. I need to just disconnect and just to kind of catch my breath again, but self-care stuff too, as well. And I do a lot of reading. I do mostly either podcasts, or I do, because I drive a lot. I'm in the car all the time. So I mostly do podcasts, or I'll do audible books and listen to books. I'm constantly taking in new information. I'm constantly taking in new perspective. I definitely listen to my emotions. If I'm having a day where I'm in the trenches too, where I need a me, I need a me to show up. Someone needs to pull me out of this trench. I really just respect where I'm feeling. I honor it. And I think in one of the things that I sent you preliminarily, I'm like, some days I'm like, I just need to sit on the couch and binge some Netflix. I need to not think. I need to not feel. I can't always be in that like higher perspective. Some days I have a really low perspective. I'm human and I honor it because as soon as I stop resisting it, it goes so much quicker. As soon as I just surrender, like I need to take the phone off the hook, meaning myself, and just disappear in some, something. And then, okay, now I'm good. I can pick it back up. So all the same things that I preach to other people, I absolutely do for myself as well. It's, and I think recognizing the snow globe thing where I try to sit outside my stuff. I try to kind of sit outside my stuff and look at how I'm feeling. Like, wow, look at how you're reacting. Wow, you could be doing better right now. You're really deep in this emotion. You need to take a step back. So I try to monitor myself and be self aware, which takes presence. Yeah. If we can't be present, then we can't be self aware. If we're stuck in what's been going on, you're really in the past. If you're worried about what's coming up, you're in the future. It's impossible to monitor yourself when you're not even in the same time zone as you are. You're future forecasting, looking back at the past and ruminating over that stuff. So when I recognize I'm doing that, then I'm like, okay, I need to get into today. What's in front of me? 5 things. What do I see? 5 things can I see? 5 things can I hear? 4 things, 3 things. It doesn't matter, whatever it takes to kind of get back to being present. And that's the way I try to regulate myself. But I also let myself get down if I'm feeling down. And I don't try to pretend like I'm not. And then it moves quicker and I feel better in some way.
Do you have a favorite or inspiring or meaningful to you client story of going through this process and really struggling and tools they use and really embrace the process? I'm sure you've had lots of those in your time, but one that really is impactful or sticks with you?
I do. I have a woman that I see now every year, once a year, she comes to me. I expect to get an email from her. She does her New Year's reading for the year to see where she's at and kind of the check-in. But years ago, so I probably worked with her for 15 years. When she came in, her energy was very closed, very guarded, like protecting herself. I'm like, wow, some stuff has happened. And it was funny because it was sort of counterintuitive to the fact that she was sitting there. I'm like, you're here, which means you're open to a degree, but man, are you closed? Very guarded, very protected. And so we saw each other more frequently in the beginning, and little by little, sort of some revelations were coming about with a lot of trauma and abuse that was happening in her household. And so we were doing Akashic record readings, which was also surprising to me because again, my feeling was she was so guarded. And that does take some openness but that desire, like she was driven to try to move through this stuff. And so in the readings, it was really interesting because it never got into kind of past life stuff. The first like 3 or 4 readings were kind of the same image, which was really interesting. And it was all about a threshold. It was all about standing there, kind of like it looked like this line that had a threshold, sort of like a doorway threshold. And there was where she was, and then what was on the other side of that threshold. And so through each time we would get together, she was doing a lot of journaling. I'm not a big journaler, but it's such a great tool if that's something that will work for you, because we're all different in what works. And she was doing a lot of journaling about each time we had a reading and what was it was almost like breadcrumbs were being dropped for her, that each time we met, there was a shift in her perspective. Like there was information that was given to her in a way that she could handle it, for lack of a better, that she was ready to hear.
Sure.
And each time we got together, she came into it and felt a little bit lighter, a little bit more open, a little more kind of determined to have an understanding of, what the bigger picture was and why. And it was so interesting because after, maybe a half a dozen times of meeting over time, it was like after the reading, we both laughed. I said, oh my gosh, we got a past life for you. It was like the first time she needed to be where she was and needed to really examine what had happened during that abuse and during that trauma in a very gentle way, and never like a submersion back into that experience. It wasn't about refeeling that or really ripping off the wound. It was really about kind of looking at what had happened with some distance that was safe, and her being able to kind of journal through it in a way of being outside of it, kind of like the snow globe, looking at it from the outside of it so that there wasn't a re-traumatizing almost.
Yeah.
And through the journaling process with her, every single time she would come in then after that and like, I really get something now. I really get it. And then it was like opened up majorly, and she just flourished, like changed, really accepted like her level of spirituality and her level of gifting, and being able to move into a level of forgiveness for different people and things that had happened. And it was almost like seeing, kind of like that phoenix analogy, seeing her kind of rise and out of that. It was just so amazing to me, because fortunately I didn't experience that kind of trauma, and I can't even imagine. But to see someone being able to accept what her past was, what the experience was, and being able to, it's not about releasing it. She was able to free herself, and it changed how she defined herself. So she changed a whole definition of who she was and what her story was, and all on her own through the process of kind of excavating it little by little in a very gentle, safe way. So that's my most inspiring, because such a difference from the person that walked into the person she is today. And so much of it because she was able to and willing to move through the process of freeing herself.
In that process, did you give her like things to do in between sessions or homework, or do you give her things to focus on? Okay, so that is part of your process.
So a lot of that was about the journaling. A lot of it was, and within the Akashic Records, it was the recommendation of doing the journaling, putting each piece on its own as like a topic on a page, so that it could be broken down bit by bit, piece by piece, look at one thing at a time, one piece at a time, whether it be a feeling, whether it be a belief, whether it be a memory, a thought, an experience, whatever it was. So so absolutely. In between, there's always like, this is what you could be working on that will support you, whether it be listening to a certain tone in music, the Hertz music, 532, the miracle tone, so, whether it be doing that, your guided meditations, your journaling, different books that you could be reading, different things to be working on, to be able to help sort of shake loose wherever they feel stuck at that time.
West Trails Wellness. What's the challenge you've had to overcome with running the business, and especially in this alternative, maybe non-mainstream challenge that you've had to overcome, and how have you done that?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't feel like it's a challenge because I live out here. So I love being able to make connections out here, and the store's in Vienna. So it's just another hat I put on. But working with West Trail has been very interesting because it's trying to bring in sort of another aspect of the holistic part of wellness. So you've got a mainstream, we talked about this, the yoga and the massage, reflexology, all of that stuff, with now people out here wanting to be able to have connections to things that are holistic. I've run several circles there. She called them Trail to Empowerment. And I did a circle on crystals, a circle on intuition and clearing. I did an Akashic record one. So people are really hungry for that. And there's plenty of time to be able to do both. And I love it. It makes me feel more deeply connected to where I spend so much time, which is, my home base. Yeah. So it's not a challenge, really. It's kind of invigorating to be able to continue that out here.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I was thinking of what would be your recommendation for Catherine, or maybe even for me too, since she did just get her Reiki and kind of getting more involved. What would you suggest is like a fun, interesting, new? Where should we explore next?
Yeah, I mean, I think, have you guys thought about working more with kids? I mean, I know you work with kids, but from the angle of the energy and teaching kids, and even folding your kids into what you're doing. Like, I feel like that is such a lane that you could be in, because you could catch them when they're young and being able to grow this new, more evolved, level of being that becomes mainstream when they become adults like us. It's already mainstream.
Yes. Yeah. And that's awesome that you say that, because that's something my daughter and I have been talking about, and my son too, because they both want to be Reiki attuned now, and they've said that they want me to lead a workshop for them. And I'm like, I would love to do that, but I have not taught yet. And I feel like I'm still learning and I'm still growing in it, but it speaks to my heart so much of like, oh my gosh, that's exciting. That sounds like so much fun. So for you to say that is really affirming for me. And it's something I've been talking about. We have a dog joining us. Okay.
Oh,
Come on.
jeez.
All right. Get in here.
Little lap dog.
Okay. So it's something that I've been talking about with another woman that I collaborate with, who is also Reiki trained and has lots of other background too. But the kids definitely, I think that would be. So what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like, there's the possibility that you two have this calling. You're clearly working. It's, and it's kind of a beautiful symbiotic thing, because you do have the ability to be in the mainstream realm, right? With what you're doing, but you're also a bridge, to this other holistic aspect. But it just feels so much like encompassing with children and even families, and being able to connect what you do in a way that supports generations, versus I work 95% of the time with adults. Like, I do have some of my clients' kids, I've done Reiki on someone as young as, I think, 8, but predominantly for the adult realm, where I feel like there's such a need for there to be more for children and young adults and even families.
Yes, I
Which
love
would
that.
be an amazing thing for you guys to do. And I feel like that's such a natural next step for you, a segue.
Yes, yeah, and even just so I was teaching yoga and mindfulness classes in the public school, the after school program, and just seeing how powerful that was, just practicing self-compassion, doing some little mindful art projects, and just them tuning into a different aspect of themselves was so powerful. I mean, just to start the class asking them to share their name and one thing they love about themselves. And the first class, only 2 kids out of 10 could say, no one could think of anything that they loved about themselves.
Oh, that's
And
sad.
it was just heartbreaking. And by the end of the 8 weeks, they could all share what they were grateful for. They could share what they loved about themselves. There was just a shift in perspective, even just in that little time. So to see where our kids are at today, and the way, all the electronics that they're on, all the things that are influencing them in daily life, and to be a positive light in that aspect, that does definitely excite me, and it
Well, I
does
think
feel.
too, one of the things that is so important, especially for kids, is they are in danger of losing their sense of power. It's been either taken away through social media or given away by the need to compare to what other people are doing or where other people are. Technology is definitely changing their brains. We know this to be true. So I think giving kids tools that are really badly needed, which is how to feel self empowered, how to move into these things that they shouldn't have to wait to adulthood to be able to have access to, when they need therapy so bad to unravel some of these things, that if they can learn some tools now to be self-empowered, which is one of the biggest priorities to me, is for my clients and people that I work with to figure out how to tap into their own sense of power. And maybe I can help guide you and teach you. But one of the things I say all the time is, don't give your power away. What do you think about this? I can tell you what I think. How does that feel to you? What is your intuition telling you? Like, and it's like, I can do that. Like, and I'm like, yes, like your intuition about yourself is way stronger than mine
Yeah.
is, but we just don't trust it. And if we can teach, especially young adults and kids, how to tap into that and what that is now, wow, wouldn't that be amazing?
Definitely. Yeah. I wish I had all the tools that I have now when I was a kid. It would have helped prevent a lot of unraveling
A
that
lot
I've
of
had to go,
stuff.
a lot of that shadow work and all the things. Yes. Yeah.
This is your journey. You're meant to be. Michele, this has been awesome. I feel like I could pick your brain for
Yes,
like
I
2 days
know.
straight. You're amazing. I'm really inspired by you, and I appreciate you joining us. And thank you for your time. Tell people, how can they find you or get a session with you, or learn more about
Yeah.
you and what you do?
So, and thank you too. I've loved talking to you. And anytime I get a chance to talk about this, I feel like we're putting it out there. I feel like it becomes available energy information into the collective consciousness. I feel like, it's just so important to have these conversations. I feel like, connecting with people like you guys, like minded people, we just add to the energy pool that's needed. I really do. But I'm at Terra Christa in Vienna, Virginia, and I'm also at West Trail in Percival, Virginia. So either one, people can reach out to me in both places. You'll find me at one or the other.
I love
That's
it. We'll
great.
have to go check out
We're coming to
the
visit.
store.
Yeah.
Yes, come to the store. Your
Very
daughters would love
fun.
the crystals. We've got
Yes.
bowls. We've got all that stuff too.
Fun.
Amazing.
Fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate you.
Thank
And we
you.
look forward to keeping in touch and
Yeah.
talking with you soon.
Thank you. It was wonderful talking to you guys.